What is going on, Hawks Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the HFTV podcast brought to you by Alex and Mac. And, we obviously missed the last week due to the holidays. So we hope each and every one of you listeners out there had a nice Thanksgiving break. And if you don't celebrate Thanksgiving like Kyrie Irving, then we just hope you had a nice um, festive break
Eat some
off
good
work,
food.
off school, eat some good food, whatever the case may be. However, not the best outcome for our Hawks over these last 7 games. Typically, we do these shows once a week. Missed it last week due to the holidays, so we missed 7 games. And in that 7 game span, we went 2-5. Below 500, 2-5, not where you want to be over the last 7 games. But we're gonna get into that in just a second here. Mac, how you feeling today, my man?
I had a wonderful Thanksgiving break, got to see some family, got to eat some good food. So feeling good on that. But when it comes to our Hawks, I am not really gonna sugarcoat it, man. It freaking sucks right now. Nobody likes losing. I think some of these games we've lost, as you kind of said, we'll go into a little bit more, but they were very winnable games against teams that if we want to be the type of team that we're attempting to be, they are below us. I don't know how else you really are supposed to say it. You know what I mean? Like, we are supposed to win those games. So I don't think it's one single thing. It's never one reason as to why things like this, can kind of start going sideways in a season. But I'll say this: if our next three out of our next 4 games are against teams with losing records, so it's a pretty good opportunity for us to right the ship and get things back to, where we're a few games over 500, not like sitting at 500. So it's a great opportunity for that. But I will say, if we kind of slip up and lose some of these games to, no disrespect to the Magic whatsoever. I think they got some young studs over there, but God forbid if we lose to the Magic tomorrow night, changes are going to have to be made. I don't know if that's, with the roster or whatever it is. But I think at that point, your season is slipping through your fingers very quickly. And that's just not something that I, for one, and I think a lot of Hawks fans as well, really expect it to happen this season. I thought we were going to kind of see a different culture, for lack of a better term there. But it's still a young season. We're only about like a little bit over a quarter of the way in, but I'm not feeling as confident as I was last time we recorded. So
Yeah, it's been rough. We are 1 game above 500 at the moment, and not where we want it to be 20 games into the season, 21 games into the season. But as you mentioned, certainly a lot of room for improvement, a lot of opportunity for us to right that ship. And what I'm hoping for, and this is the very optimistic side of me, Mac, and to my fellow listeners. But if you guys remember what happened last year, a team similar age to us, the Boston Celtics, they were pretty much on and off, teetering around 500, pretty much throughout up until All-Star break. And then after the All-Star break, they really just hit their stride. And then, as you guys know, they made it to the finals. I'm not saying we're going to make the finals, but historically, teams have done this, right? Where they've just completely turned that season around. And, much like the game of basketball, this season is about runs. And we saw what we did 2 years ago when, after we fired Lloyd Pierce, we went on a crazy win streak and we finished the season off at like 28 and like 12 or something like that. So I think this team right now is way more talented than the team before. But yeah, I mean, it's a new team, guys, and obviously there needed time for us to gel. The new pieces, DeJounte Murray, etc. I didn't think it was going to be this bad at 11-10, but on the bright side of things, we still have a winning record at this point, and hopefully, with some of these next games, like you mentioned, like the Magic and the Thunder and the Knicks, like these are very, very favorable games for us to get back on the right side of things. But I'm not even that confident even going against the lesser teams because, I mean, we saw what happened against Houston. We saw us get destroyed by Miami yet again, and things like that. So we'll see what happens. But again, a lot of opportunity to right the ship. And our team needs to dig deep because right now the season's still early, and we don't want to let this slip away too fast because we saw what happened last year. But I'm still hopeful.
yeah, no, I think I'm glad you kind of brought up the Hawks from 2 years ago, and even the Celtics last year. Because I mean, I agree with you. It's not saying that is what will happen, but it's just saying, hey, this can happen. You can change things pretty drastically in the NBA and go on a 10-game winning streak and be right back in it and as a top 3 seed or whatever it may be. So I'm definitely not putting this season in the books by any means, nor should any other Hawks fan. But I didn't want early December to be as crucial as it's looking like it may be. But here we are. It is, and that's okay. It's a long season, and you know, I think where I get worried a little bit, because those of you who may not know, Bogey, he's my favorite player on the team, right? So I'm glad he's coming back in a few games, but I just don't know if he is going to make that big of a difference. You know what I mean? Like I hope he will. I hope he can. I hope he's just this spark plug for us, especially the second unit. But um, we'll see what happens. I have always liked to be realistic. Sometimes I can get a little unrealistic with the Hawks earlier in the season when we're doing well, but um, you know, it's I don't want to, highlight one loss too much, but the Houston one was just a frustrating one for me personally. I think a lot of people were pretty frustrated. I mean, I know on Twitter, like any loss, people were pretty upset, but I think it was kind of the same uh, sentiment throughout all of Twitter, was that it was like, how did we let not only a team this bad, but it was very clear that Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green had gotten under Trey and DeJounte's skin. I know that they still put up big nights offensively, and maybe it wasn't even just that they were under DeJounte and Trey's skin, maybe the entire teams. I don't know. It's hard to tell with things like that when it's happening in real time. But man, I thought that was a bad look. I really do. I'm sure some of you guys saw that they were posting on Instagram talking smack afterwards, which, I mean, hey, that's what this younger generation is going to do. There's nothing wrong with that, but it definitely was one of those like salt in the wound kind of things. You know what I mean? So not a fun 7 games, but it is what it is, man.
It is what it is, and I'm glad that this team is going through some hardship because that's we're going to see what this team is made out of, right? And if this team is serious, they're going to right the ship. And definitely some disappointing losses sprinkled in the last 7 games, like you mentioned that Houston game when you have a career night from DeJounte. Trey has his best offensive game, at least of the season, and we could have made history that night. DeJounte was 1 point away from having 2 players on the same team score 40 or more points, so that would have been cool. But um, it's guys, the optimistic side, like we're at 11-10, obviously not where we want to be, but only 2 games separate us from the where we're currently at, which is the 8th seed, and the 3rd seed, who are the Cleveland Cavaliers. They only have 2 more wins than us, so still very early. A lot of time for us to rack up some wins, and we played a pretty hard schedule, right? Aside from the first few games of the season, the schedule these past couple of weeks have been one of the hardest
Bit of
stretches
gauntlet. Yeah.
of the season. Exactly. And we're still above 500. So we'll see what happens. And as you mentioned, the big news that happened this morning is Landry Fields this morning on 92.9 The Game. He did mention that Bogey is looking really good, and he expects him to come back in the next few games, quote unquote. So we'll see how many games a few games is. It could be 2 games. It could be 5 games. It could be another 2 weeks. Who knows? But at least, we're seeing some sort of update. Bogey's making progress. He did participate in 5-on-5 the other day, so that's a really good sign. Usually that means they're only a couple of days away. So hopefully Bogey comes back. Obviously, that's going to help with our spacing. That's going to help with our shooting. That's going to help with our second unit. But as you mentioned, Mac, even with the addition of Bogey, there's still a lot of concerns around this team, right? And you and I, we watch every single game, and this isn't me trying to slander someone, but there's definitely some schematic issues. And I don't want to put all the blame on one person or the other, right? I don't think it's all the players. I don't think it's just Coach McMillan and the coaching staff. It's a culmination of a few different things. But when you see the way your team's performing and you see the types of mistakes that we've been doing consistently, you have to look at, the leader of the squad, right? The top down, and that is your head coach of the team. When we're consistently having no offense, not moving the ball, we're running 0 sets and strong, big stretches of the games, most notably the fourth quarter. That's definitely a concern that a lot of fans talk about, and we talked about this on the show on Twitter Spaces. Which, by the way, if you're not following us, follow us on Twitter at HawksFanTV. But there's still a lot of room for improvement. So we can just hope and pray, and hopefully when Bogey comes back, that gives us a little surge. But we'll see. We'll see how the season shapes up, Mac.
Oh yeah, no. I'm kind of glad you kind of were hinting at it towards the end of what you said there. Again, you totally agree with you. I don't think you can blame it on one thing, whether it's the players or the coaching. But I did see something on Twitter recently where someone was defending Nate, and they said that Lauren Jabara, the reporter for the Hawks on Bally Sports, like overheard Nate during a timeout at one of the games recently, telling the players that they got to stop chucking up shots, and they need to find their third or fourth option and things like that. And don't get me wrong, that's great coaching, but I'm not trying to sound like this. I'm sure he said more, but that's great coaching if you're coaching a a basketball league team. I mean, a church league team for 7th graders. I'm saying that's very basic, fundamental things to be telling NBA players. I would love to see him, sounding a little more schematic with some of the things he says and that. But again, that's there's absolutely no proof that is what was said. That's just what I read. And I guess what I'm really getting at is their defense of Nate didn't really impress me that much. It was just kind of like, all right, well, sounds like he's just kind of telling his, relate it to football, telling his offensive line to go block. Like, oh wow, man, what great coaching. So I'm just saying. So it's one of those where Nate, I'm positive he's a good guy outside of being the head coach of the Atlanta Hawks. I'm sure he's a great husband, a great father, all those things. I do want people to remember that if people want Nate to be fired here soon, if things don't improve, Nate McMillan is a multimillionaire, so he will be fine. I think sometimes, you hear people like Stephen A. Smith honestly say the most, like, I'm never going to call for a man's job. I get it. Coaching it's weird. It's a weird profession. Like Alex, you work in sales. I work for a wealth management platform. Like nobody would ever be calling for our jobs like that. I understand that. But I also don't make the type of money that Nate McMillan makes. So that being said, I do want that to always kind of be in the back of people's minds if you get defensive on that aspect of someone being fired as a coach. So
Yeah, and it happens in every profession, right? Just because you're a player or you're a coach or maybe you're a bag boy at a grocery store or you work in a corporate job, your job is to perform to the best of your ability. It's to make your business or whatever employer that's employing you look good. And so when you're in the public eye of a NBA team and you're not doing the best of your ability and you're not doing your job well, then I understand why some fans feel the need to call for his job, because why should you employ someone that isn't doing a good job? Point blank, period, right? And I get it. Like it's a tough job to have, and I'm not saying that it's a tough job, right? And 99% of people on Twitter that are calling for Nate's head, have not a single clue how to coach a basketball team or game plan or prep or read a scouting report, etc. So there's a lot more that go into it. But then again, those guys on Twitter still have some sense in the fact that like we shouldn't just be playing isolation ball, in crunch time for multiple straight games, right? There has to be some sort of organization. There has to be some sort of set plays that this team runs. And I feel like a lot of the time the general consensus is Nate McMillan ultimately just leans on DeJounte and Trey to just say, you know what, go out and make a play. And I tweeted this on the Twitter account a couple days ago. A lot of it sometimes looks like we're just playing pickup 5-on-5 basketball. Like, you just took 5 random guys on a court and they're playing for the first time. There's no sense of continuity. There's no sense of any chemistry except for some stretches. And we see that, which lets me know that this team has the ability to play well. It's most notably in the first half, especially last night's game against the 76ers. We were humming on offense in that first half, and then yet again another fourth quarter collapse. It's not pretty to watch. So that's where you have to look at the head coach, the leader of your team, to reset the focus, draw up some plays, or have some sort of game plan. Maybe it's to attack the basket and, make a point of emphasis to get to the line, or settling for certain, run an off-ball pin down, run an off-ball backdoor screen. You just can't rely on Trey and DJ to just run pick and roll 24/7 and expect them to score every single possession, right? This is the best basketball league in the entire world, and these are NBA players that you're going up against, and sometimes that free-flowing pick and roll and just pickup style basketball isn't gonna usually bode well for you. So we're just gonna have to see what this team is made out of, and we're gonna see if Nate can change some things. Now, granted, I don't want to be too hard on him, because I have seen some changes that Nate has done this season that we haven't been accustomed to seeing, right? The whole negative stereotype with Nate was he doesn't play the young guys, he doesn't play rookies. He's made a change, right? He played AJ Griffin. AJ Griffin is seemingly pretty much in the rotation now. He's a part of that rotation, playing 15 plus minutes a night. He even saw that Aaron Holiday wasn't performing to the best of his ability and switched it up and played Trent Forrest, who was an undrafted guy at Florida State. So I respect and I appreciate Nate trying to switch some things up from a personnel standpoint, but we got to be better on offense. We just have to.
Oh yeah, couldn't agree with you more. I won't say too much about it because definitely don't want to beat a dead horse by any means. I think everybody kind of feels the same. But I think, like I said, you didn't want early December to be as crucial as it looks like it's going to be. But we do have some very winnable games here coming up, and I for one, am going to keep the hope alive and think that, we will right this ship. I think, we're still a damn good basketball team. And like you said last night in the first half, it shows, I mean, we can run with the best of them when we're playing to our best. So, I think, the spirits will be a little higher next week when we record. I do feel confident to some degree about this next week, but I'll be honest, man, if we go into next week's episode when we record and it's one of those where we're 1-2 or whatever it may be, God forbid, maybe 0-3, I think some serious changes will need to be made at that point. But we'll see what happens, man. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, no doubt. So yeah, guys, it's going to be a relatively shorter episode today. 2-5, not acceptable. And I tweeted this the other day. If we are coming towards the end of December, right before the new year, and this team is still hovering around 500, then I don't think it's going to happen. But Nate McMillan's seat might be pretty hot by then. All right. And I don't think just because you change Nate McMillan, this team is just going to do a complete 180 like what we did with Lloyd Pierce. But the talent on this team, when I look at this starting five, especially, these are all legitimate players, right? You have an all NBA point guard, you have an all-star caliber number 2 in DeJounte Murray, and you have really, really strong rotational pieces in DeAndre Hunter, Clint Capella, especially John Collins. Like, these guys are good players. Clint Capella would be a starter on 20 plus teams. JC would be starting on a handful of teams. DeAndre, same thing. And when you look at our bench, AJ Griffin, Bogey when he comes back. So the personnel and the talent on this team is a lot better than 11-10. So hopefully Nate can maximize this talent. He can maximize the personnel, and we start racking up some wins, guys. So that's really what we need here. And as Mac mentioned, we have these next 5 games or so. I want to say only one of them have a winning record. So at the very least, I'm hopeful that we can go 4-1 in these next 5. But again, from what we've seen, I don't think we're going to go 4-1. But we'll see what happens. We, pray for the best, expect the worst.
Oh yeah. You said it. You said it best, my friend. We'll go ahead and wrap up there. Hopefully, like I said, guys, spirits are a little higher next week. But as always, thank you guys for the support of the podcast, the account, and the articles and all that good stuff. Can't thank you guys enough. Be looking out for more content. Hopefully, it's a little more positive going forward. But we'll see what happens, guys. When you do these things, it's completely out of our control. So. We'll see what happens, but thank you guys for the support, and as always, go Hawks.
Go Hawks. Thank you guys for listening.